Hello, third period. Sorry to be out today. I had a meeting at some CPS office that I was very excited to be at. Actually, I'd rather much be with you all because this is the start of my favorite unit. I love teaching the basics of supply and demand. So let's get into some of the basics right away. So we're going to start today by introducing the demand curve itself. So what we're building here is a market. A market is just what you think it is. A market is any place where buyers, which we'll call demanders, and sellers, suppliers, meet. Now, markets used to be marketplaces. You would go out in the streets and there'd be sellers with booths, and you would walk around and you'd haggle all your prices, and all the prices would be very much fluid and changeable. Nowadays, markets are a little bit more set. You have supermarkets where you walk in the grocery store, all the prices are labeled, and you don't have much power as a buyer, or so you think, because these markets are still setting their prices based on the behaviors of the demanders. And so competitive markets, which is any market where there's a lot of buyers and a lot of sellers, will always exist in our society and will always help us determine the prices and the quantities of the products. No one buyer or seller alone can impact the price. When it's competitive, all the buyers and sellers are way too small to actually impact the price. Now, this is what the ultimate competitive market is going to look like. It's going to look like a downward sloping demand curve and an upward sloping supply curve. On the vertical axis, you'll have price. On the horizontal axis, you'll have quantity. And where the two curves meet is known as equilibrium. Now, we'll spend a lot more time on equilibrium, so just for now, know that when you draw this graph, it is very important to get the axis labels right and then also to mark equilibrium. This graph marks them as P star and Q star, but you could use P1 and Q1. When I'm back in class next Monday, I will walk you through a little bit more detailed explanation of how to draw this graph. All right, big definition here. This was right from Module 5. Demand shows how much of a product consumers are willing and able to buy at a series of prices. Now, those two lines, willing and able, are underlined because I am willing, more than willing, to own a Tesla, one of those really sleek, fast, quiet electric cars. But I will never, in my life, be able to do that. So I don't have demand. Similarly, I'm able to go to the grocery store and buy a watermelon. I'm able to do that, but I am not willing to do that because I am very much allergic to watermelons. So don't have demand for watermelons. The only things you have demand for are things that you are both willing and able to purchase. You have to have both of those conditions. So this is different than a want. When you want something, that's not demand, that's willingness. You need to also have the ability. You need to be able to use cash, a debit card, a credit card to actually purchase a good. And then once you have demand, demand can be measured. And demand will be measured on a table like this. This is called a demand schedule. You'll notice in the left-hand column, it's the prices. And in the right-hand column is the cumulative quantity demanded per week from the society. And at high prices, quantity demanded is fairly low because why would I want to buy something when the price is fairly high? And then demand goes up when price goes down. So the schedule shows how much buyers are willing and able to buy at the 5 prices. The market price, note, we don't know yet. We just know the price and the demand. In order to figure out which price will be on the price tag in the supermarket, we need to also know the supply. And to be meaningful, and this is important, the demand schedule must have a period of time associated with it. Because you don't want to leave this open-ended. Because of course, demand for soda is going to be bigger than 250 over the lifetime of the good. But right now, within the week, it's going to be 250. Okay, a question from the crowd, or actually a question from one of my other crowds. The question then is, what is the relationship between price and demand? What happens when the price goes down? Okay, so the quantity demanded goes up. What happens when the price goes up? Well, the opposite is true. The quantity demanded goes down. So this brings us to our first law of economics. This is the law of demand. And much like a law in math class or in science class, laws are unbreakable. They always exist. And so the law of demand is the fundamental characteristic of demand behavior. It says, other things being equal, as price increases, the corresponding quantity demanded falls. Meaning if price goes up, the quantity the society wants to buy will go down. Another way to say that would be there's an inverse relationship between price and quantity. One goes up, the other goes down. One goes down, the other goes up. And be aware that the other things being equal assumption refers to another handful of factors, like outside factors that could come in and impact demand. I'm betting you can think of a bunch of them right now. Right? When are most umbrellas sold? Well, when it's raining. That's not a price change. That's something else happening. And when we draw a demand curve, it will always be a downward sloping line. Now the slope will not always be constant, but the line will always be downward sloping, and we'll get practice doing that this class and then in classes to come. Okay, so at this point Nathan's going to pause the presentation, and if you need to go back at all, he'll scroll through the slides to make sure that everyone caught all the information. And then we're going to engage in an activity where you're going to measure and then draw a demand curve. Once everyone's done, we'll come back and finish out the slideshow. Okay, so we're back, and now we're thinking about what else could happen after we've measured demand. And so previously we talked about how there are other things that could shift demand. And this is key. There are these other things, other than price, that will move the whole demand curve. And it's very important to be aware of wording here. This is a precise language thing. There's a difference between moving along a demand curve and shifting the entire demand curve. So if I were to say a decrease in the price of tacos causes an increase in the quantity of tacos demanded, that just meant we went from one point on a demand curve to another point on a demand curve. Right, this is confusing. Maybe you'll ask Nathan to pause this right here, draw it on the board, or I will catch you up on Monday. A shift of the demand curve occurs when something else impacts the market for tacos. So in this example, an increase in the price of complement X caused a decrease in the demand for tacos. So change in a shifter causes a change in demand. If demand goes up, it shifts to the right, meaning at any price consumers want to buy more. If demand goes down, it shifts to the left, meaning at any price consumers wish to buy less. Okay, so let's run through the shifters real quick. I'm going to go fast because we'll cover these in more depth on Monday, and you should have read about them in Module 5. So the first is price of related goods. So things like Coke and Pepsi are substitute goods. These are things that can be used in place of each other. And the price of a substitute and demand are directly related. So if the price of Coke goes up, the demand for Pepsi is going to go up because people are going to switch from Coke to Pepsi. Opposite of substitute goods are complementary goods. These are goods that are used together. So not Coke and Pepsi, those are substitutes. Complementary goods are peanut butter and jelly. So if the price of peanut butter goes up, what's going to happen to the demand for jelly? Well, the demand for jelly will go down. Okay, another question from the crowd. He's a little behind. That's okay. We'll catch him up tomorrow in his class. All right, income. Income is the next shifter. A normal good, and this is a little bit mean. Things that are normal goods are things that you buy when you have more money. When you have less money, you buy more inferior goods. So when I have more money, I don't buy a McDonald's hamburger, I go to Five Guys. That's a normal good. When I am feeling poorer, feeling the pinch of my pockets, I'm going to go and buy the inferior good. Well, not the people themselves, but the products they buy are inferior. They're of lower quality. So income is the second shifter. The third shifter is tastes. A favorable change in taste leads to an increase in demand. An unfavorable change in taste leads to a decrease in demand. So um, I'm not betting many people are buying Cutler jerseys, although I bet the Bears still have some that they'd love to sell. So the demand for Cutler jerseys has gone down. The fourth one is expectations. If I expect something to happen about future prices, product availability, and income, these can shift demand. So when is the best time to buy, for example, a swimsuit? Well, the best time is now because I expect the prices to be cheaper. So demand is low now, so I'm buying a swimsuit. This is a tricky one. We'll talk about it more in person. And the last one is actually the easiest one, and that's the number of buyers. The more buyers there are, the more demand there is. The less buyers there are, the less demand there is. So this is Metamucil. It is a fiber supplement. It is to help you be a little bit more consistent. So yeah, it's not a bad thing, Malik. Fiber is an important part of anybody's diet. So next class, we're going to talk about this. What are some goods and services affected by shifters?